this program. We have submitted that to our countries and the European Commission, and in the middle of getting this all set up. I would like to give you a bit of an update where we are. And before we look into what's soon to come, I think it's a good time to look back and see what has happened over the last couple of years, what we achieved in JPI Urban Europe, what we have created, and what we learned from that. This might be even more important to see what do we need to change, how can we step up the game. So be with me and join me on a short tour to what has happened over the last years in a few facts and figures. So JPI Urban Europe, operating since 10 years, has a stable and builds upon a stable network of participating countries and funding agencies likewise. We have 41 agencies that have been investing in one or more of our calls and activities. 2 years ago, we started even a new sub-program and extending the network of partners on positive energy districts, which we set up in cooperation with a set plan action on smart cities. So this already forms a very strong pillar for the coming partnership, and also a good reference to how such a program can look like, and the very mission-oriented approach could look like. We have published 2 research and innovation agendas, the last one early 2019, on which we're strongly building also the partnership. But the most visible part of what we did so far are our projects and the calls. So far, we had 9 calls up and running on the implementation, some of them in cooperation with the European Commission, some of them with international partners. We have contracted a bit more than 90 million euro and created 84 projects that are supported and implemented by more than 500 beneficiaries and then organizations, research organizations, cities, many other organizations as well. But beyond that, we started into building a community, because the projects are important. They are the most visible part, but we need to take it further. We need to create a community of all these urban stakeholders and actors. You were just discussing that in the previous sessions, the importance of science policy cooperation, science society cooperation. So that's what we have picked up in our community building with our Agora that we have created with the Urban Europe Research Alliance, a network of now 54 research organizations and universities. And beyond that, even, we are taking quite high efforts to communicate the results. Everything that the project created, we want to bring to you, to the cities, through lunch talks, through events, through training sessions that we tested. So zooming in this a bit, to make it more concrete, picking one of our calls that recently finished here's the formal facts and figures of 15 projects that were granted and all the partners that participated. If you look at the distribution of organizations that engaged in the projects, you see a strong contribution from research, formally less from city and municipalities. But if we even take a closer look what has happened actually in the projects, we see that these 15 projects implemented 34 urban living labs, place-based experimentation, co-design in the various cities and neighborhoods. We saw that 76 local governments were engaged in the projects, even if they were not formal partners. The projects were able to build upon this local experimentation, to use that and mobilize and engage the local administration, the public authorities in the projects. And they created about 30 policy recommendations that we have now collected, that we make available. You see the links on the right-hand side. They are now to share. They hopefully will bring benefits to all of our cities. So looking a bit closer, our projects have created apps and digital platforms so that people, inhabitants, can monitor their, for example, energy behavior, and maybe change that behavior because it gets visible and transparent. We have a project that are looking into how we can bring urban manufacturing back with the development of circular economies, of new urban economies. What is the potential to get cities into manufacturing? again. And there is a book, there were references, there were cases, advice for policymakers, how this could play out and what strategies they could use. We have a lab kit created for urban experimentation, how to set up urban living labs, how to co-design developments, and not only for researchers, likewise for urban administration to get into these new modes of involving all the stakeholders. One other example on creating recommendations, how to regenerate large-scale social housing estates. How can they develop new policies, new strategies to redesign their situations? So with all of that, just a snapshot and many more projects that created these insights that we want to bring to our cities, to the policy and decision makers to take action. And most of that has been co-designed. But still, the conclusions that we take from the findings and from all the discussions that we had with you as stakeholders over the last years, actually, they clearly indicate that we need to be better in bringing the theory into practice, right? Into creating the action together. It has been discussed this morning, and what you have raised in the Menti polls on what needs to be done is something that we fully agree to, but most of that is not new, right? We're talking about these issues for several years now. So we need really to step up the game and become better into bringing this into action, bringing it to final decision making, to the political level, bringing it to our citizens. So this is something we need to take up in the design of our future program as well. We also learned that it's that the how we're doing that is at least equally important than the what. In principle, we know what we would need to change in order to make our cities greener, create less CO2 emissions, reduce mobility. It's all there, and a lot of solutions are there of what could be done. But the issue is, how do we get that implemented? And I think Caroline was saying it's about building the capacities in the cities to take this up, right? It's not only about creating the technologies, it's about making sure that they can be used, that the social dimension is there, that there is a just transition. So how do we get there? How do we involve all the various stakeholders? How can we buy people in order to achieve this change that is urgently needed? One element that was voiced in all the consultation is that we need to create shared visions. This starts on top with strong leaderships and ends with involving everyone in this movement, making it transparent and making it understood what needs to happen and how it could take place. And we need the critical mass of good practice in a way that it's not about single pilots and demonstration projects. It's about bringing this practice much more into our daily use. So living labs are seen as essential. The experimentation in our place-based areas is important, but not as a standalone project, a standalone exercise. It's something that needs to become an integral part of our daily business in the city administration, in companies, in all stakeholder actions. So this is something that we need to understand. How can we support these experiments, but more importantly, bring that into daily routines? And this, of course, needs capacities. It was mentioned before, the capacities to deal with this complexity, with these uncertainties, and addressing dilemmas that occur. So we're taking this up, and we are here to create a program that addresses that in a substantial way. The vision that the Driving Urban Transition Partnership created, that all the partners are committed to realize, is to make this happen, to enable the authorities and municipalities and all other stakeholders to get into the actions and develop the skills and tools to do so, which goes far beyond a traditional research project, right? It's not only about the creation of knowledge, but it's about how this can be turned into action. And the challenges are laid out. So how we would like to address that is by supporting the capacity building, creating these projects and the funding, the resources, so that you can experiment on different levels. We want to address it with a very integrated approach, it was mentioned before, it's not a silo thing that we can continue working with. We need to go across these silos and disciplines and sectors. So we want to focus our research on these cross-cutting issues, addressing dilemmas across the various disciplines. And we want to make this available as much as we can so that other regions, other countries can benefit from that. We have laid out our thematic priorities. It's on the positive energy district, continuing what we have started already. And there are 2 new pillars that we are looking into, which is the 15-minute city, a transformation of urban mobility systems and space, and the downsizing district donuts, like connecting the circularity debate with the nature-based solution potential and the greening of cities. And we will talk about these pillars in the afternoon. There will be breakout sessions addressing these pillars individually, and you will have the opportunity to contribute to that later on. So I won't touch upon much in this context, but would like to highlight that in our implementation, we're building on 3 main areas. That is the co-creation of new approaches, concepts, solutions, methods, tools, whatever, through the projects, through the investments that our partners are doing. But beyond that, we will continue the capacity and community building. We want to continue the Agora and extend the Agora dialogues. We want to create knowledge hubs. We want to, but also understand how we can take the research into implementation more strongly. Even if the research is co-designed with all the stakeholders, it's still a way to go until it is finally implemented in our cities. So we need models for replication and mainstreaming. We need to create synthesis and recommendations from all the various projects, not only individually, but as a collected capacity. International cooperation is something we will look into to position the European approach well within the global context. And this will be done in cooperation with many other partnerships and initiatives as an aligned effort to co-design our future. So for those of you that want to get started soon, the partnership will come to life hopefully end of next year. So until then, we still have a way to develop the program and set the details. But there are opportunities for you to get ready already soon. We have 3 aeronets ongoing that are set up in a way that they are preparing towards the partnership and the 3 pillars. We have an urban transition capacities call coming up soon. A consultation is open for now, where you are all invited to contribute to. We have on urban accessibility new calls coming up mid of next year. An aeronet on positive energy district is in preparation, and we hope to get started any day now. So there are activities going on, and they will hopefully create an environment that help us to transform ourselves from where we are in JPI Urban Europe to the partnership, get the community ready, and address some of the topics that are key towards these pillars already in the next year and in the coming years before the partnership fully is in place. If you're interested in learning what we did in all the consultations, because what I'm presenting here is based on many consultations and discussions with cities, with researchers, with local initiatives, grassroots, and the like. So if you want to get more information, have a read in the reports from the previous consultations. And with that, I would very much like you to join us in that community. We will only succeed if we team up on that, and we are aware that we need to step up the game and get the big leap going. So this is an invitation to join forces, engage today in the afternoon, and in the month and years to come. This so far an overview where we are. I could imagine there are a couple of questions, and maybe James helped me to get the discussion going.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Margit, and really fascinating presentation. Just while those questions are coming through, perhaps I can ask one, which is, how does this transition, the DUT, work with the Commission over a longer term, over its Horizon Europe timetable? Is there a longer term initiative, or is it still annually based?
Yeah, so that's the advantage of the framework of a European partnership. We learned that these annual aeronets and settings, they are very heavy burden on all sides. So the European partnership framework creates a 7-year context, right? And the commitment of member states and the Commission on a longer term perspective for these 7 years. So this creates the opportunity to set up now a program, and we are the only partnership addressing the urban challenges in an integrated approach. So that's why we're really happy we made it that far. This creates a framework that we can continue with these pillars, with these thematic priorities, with our ambitions on a time scale of 5 to 7 years, and get the backing from all parties to really enter this cooperation.
Great. Well, that's really helpful. And presumably this presentation will be shared.
Yes, of course.
For those who have more questions, and obviously this afternoon we've got a sort of breakout rooms and discussions on it. There's a question coming in from Noll, which is asking, don't you think that physical accountability, the energy and material for all human activities, could be a main lever to drive urban transformation?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yeah, but the physical accountability for human activities, could this be a main lever to drive urban transformation? Is it more around the energy, the materials, change in the shape or almost of what a city is?
Yeah, so if you look into you will see more about that in the breakout sessions in the afternoon. Each of the pillars that we have laid out might have a focus on a particular kind of infrastructure, like the positive energy district and neighborhoods, or the 15-minute city more on turning towards mobility infrastructure system. But it's actually not, right? It's very much about the governance. It's about getting creating a dynamic to redesign the cities with all the parties involved. And I just read the remark on the urban living labs. No, the citizens are not an object, right? The citizens are very much part of these urban living labs. This is a lab as an arena, as an environment for co-designing the solutions with all people that are relevant and that are interested for that. So this is neither a lab that is experimenting on the city. It's an experiment with the city and in the city, with all the stakeholders involved. So even if we need to take the concept further, I think the approaches that we have experimented with are quite well placed to help take care of the social dimension as well, right? On the human dimension, what the needs of the people and the communities are, and not only what maybe technical solutions might offer.
Great. And then a question from Silvio asking, is the UK included in the partnership on Brexit?
I would hope so, because actually the Brexit does not matter for us. Mm-hmm. We are a member states, a transnational intergovernmental, I think that's the right word, intergovernmental initiative. Wherever the government sits, it does not necessarily be a European member state. Right? It's the starting point, and the formal decision is made within the members or among the member states of the European Union, but all countries beyond the European continent are invited to join, and UK is at the moment a partner in Urban Europe, and we very much hope so this will remain.
Okay, and perhaps there's a follow-up question from Gisi, which is, will the DUT partnership work with the national rules, as for JPI Urban Europe often in calls is dependent on who finances, or is it open for everybody?
Yeah, we're still working on these details, right? How this will play out. But in principle, it will be based on the national settings, and we are working to get them as flexible as possible. We are aware that the funding issue is not perfect in for all our partner institutions, but we're on that. There might be an opportunity to have more flexible rules, even, and maybe use European Europe rules for some of the activities, but this is something to come.
Okay, and then perhaps a question from Elena following on from Caroline's presentation in the last session, which is talking a little bit more about the youth. What about job creation and new types of jobs aligned with a sustainable economic model play out in DUT and the priorities for a green recovery? Is there, a focus more on younger people and new models and how that will play out in the DUT?
So this is something we are co-designing, actually, right? So the entire beyond growth strategies and economic linear growth strategies and models, this discussion is going on strongly within the downsizing district donuts pillar. So we try to focus, or at least partly focus on issues how we can redesign the economic model, building upon circularity. And I guess this is not limited to young people only, right? Social entrepreneurs hopefully will find an interesting environment, but also the redesign of business models to anticipate the potentials of, or the needs of a 15-minute city, or the potential of redesigning our energy systems will hopefully address not only young people, but everyone.
Okay, and then perhaps a question more around the sort of metrics, or how do you measure success for the DUT? This is a question that I paraphrased from Suzanne, which is how can we recognize what contribution the DUT makes in practice?
There will be different measures that we need to get right. There will be a level of formal monitoring of the program activities also to our partners and the European Commission. But of course, we want to really look into how we are able to mobilize all the different stakeholder groups. What role actually then can city administration and is city administration playing in the projects and the activities? The longer term impact, the societal impact is a difficult one, right? So we all struggle with measuring that. So whoever has a solution for how we can measure the impact that we are creating in our cities, in the neighborhoods, is very welcome to share that with us. We are all working on this. Until then, we try to create indicators that at least let us understand if we have the right implementation measures, if our trainings are right, if our dissemination measures are right, if the conditions for the projects are right and well placed to help create an immediate impact at least.
Okay, and then perhaps it's a related question, but and perhaps you can give some examples, within your presentation that you can refer to, but what is good urban transition in practice? Is there something, what is it?
I guess this is a question for all of us, and a very good one to have a debate with the panelists in the previous sessions and in the breakout sessions as well. So what is the right transition? We discussed that question with many stakeholders, right? In our consultations and in the dialogues, we asked exactly that. So if you want to move on, if you want to get a big leap going, take a bigger step, how should that look like? What do we need to get right? And in principle, the answer is get the people on board, get everyone on board so that we can move on, right? Let everyone have a share in that. Let them engage, understand what change is needed, and let them be part of the solution. So the big leap is not about, or the right transition is not about a concrete solution or a new infrastructure or redesign of that, but rather on that we make progress, right? That we have leadership that is taking up the challenge, and that how we have a narrative that allows people to understand the urgency and let them follow and engage. So I think that would be my take on the right kind of transition, what also I learned in all the conversations that we had.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Margit. And I'll leave the final question as not a question, but more of a statement from Alan, who asks, he says he likes the 3 pillars and he thinks it's a very simple and relevant way and a nice phrasing of the policy goals at an urban level. So I think the work that you're doing at JPI is obviously resonating and really being very helpful for a lot of the attendees here. And that's probably a nice way to conclude this morning's session. We'll now take an hour's break before coming back into the breakout rooms that Margit just mentioned. So we will take an hour's break, and then we will. Oh, actually, before we have the breakouts, we've got a keynote from Patrick Child from the European Commission. So just checking my notes there. So see you back in an hour at 2 o'clock continental time. Thanks so much, all. Thanks, Margit.
Thanks, James, and thanks all for joining. Looking forward to seeing you in the afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.